Commander Hana stared at the tactical display with tired eyes. Red dots covered the holographic map like a disease spreading across healthy tissue. Each dot represented a Vorthak warship, and there were thousands of them moving toward Kepler 442, the last stronghold of the Galactic Coalition. 847 days. That was how long this nightmare had lasted. 847 days since the Vorthak Empire declared war on every peaceful species in their sector of the galaxy. 847 days of watching friends die, planets burn, and hope fade away like smoke in the void of space. The bridge of the Coalition flagship Harmony hummed with quiet desperation. Officers from a dozen different species worked at their stations, their movements sharp and efficient despite the exhaustion that weighed on everyone's shoulders. The Aldorians, with their blue-scaled skin and large black eyes, had always been natural diplomats. War was not in their nature. The Kalani, tall and graceful with their silver hair flowing like water, were explorers and scientists. The Brenari, small and quick with their golden fur, were traders and builders. None of them were warriors, not really. They had learned to fight because they had to, but it was like watching children play with weapons too big for their hands. "Status report," Hana called out, her voice steady, despite the fear gnawing at her chest. 17 more ships lost in the outer defense grid, reported her tactical officer, a young Kalani named Yuki. "The Vorthak are pushing through our lines like we are not even there." Hana nodded slowly. The Coalition had started this war with over 2 million ships spread across their territories. Now they had fewer than 300,000 vessels, most of them damaged and running low on supplies. The Vorthak, meanwhile, seemed to have endless numbers. Their gray, angular ships moved through space like hungry sharks, destroying everything in their path. The Vorthak themselves were a mystery. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in thick armor that looked like it had grown from their bodies. Their faces were hidden behind masks that never came off, and they spoke only to demand surrender or announce destruction. They had appeared from beyond the galactic rim 3 years ago, conquering system after system with brutal efficiency. "Ma'am," a voice called from across the bridge. Hana turned to see Captain Wu approaching her command chair. The human was short compared to most species on the bridge, barely reaching Hana's shoulder, but there was something about his calm presence that always made her feel slightly better. Humans were still new to galactic society. They had only achieved faster-than-light travel 200 years ago, making them babies compared to species like the Aldorians, who had been traveling the stars for over 3,000 years. Most Coalition members still thought of humans as primitive and underdeveloped, though they were polite enough not to say it directly. "Captain Wu," Hana said, managing a weak smile. "I suppose you have heard the news. That the Vorthak will be here within 48 hours? "Yes, I heard." Wu's expression was calm, almost peaceful. It was strange how humans could look so relaxed even when facing certain death. "I also heard that the Coalition Council has decided to evacuate all non-essential personnel to the outer colonies." Hana felt her stomach twist. The outer colonies were barely developed worlds on the edge of known space. Sending civilians there was essentially admitting defeat. It was also probably futile. The Vorthak had shown no mercy to anyone, military or civilian. "The evacuation ships will launch in 6 hours," she said quietly. "We will hold the line as long as possible to give them time to escape." Wu nodded thoughtfully. He had been assigned to the Coalition fleet as a diplomatic observer when the war started, representing the small cluster of human colonies that existed on the far edge of Coalition space. During the past 2 years, he had become something of a trusted advisor to Hana, though she was not entirely sure why. Perhaps it was because humans seemed to approach problems differently than other species. "Commander," Wu said slowly, "there is something I need to ask you." "What is it?" 3 times during this war, human colonies have offered military assistance to the Coalition. 3 times the Council has politely declined, saying that our technology and experience were not advanced enough to make a significant difference. Wu paused, his brown eyes meeting hers. "I need to know if that position has changed." Hana felt a flush of embarrassment. It was true. Early in the war, human representatives had approached the coalition offering ships, weapons, and soldiers. The council had turned them down, not wanting to involve such a young species in what they thought would be a quick conflict. Later, when the war dragged on, they had refused human help again, believing that primitive human technology would only get in the way of more advanced coalition forces. The third time, just 6 months ago, the humans had offered to evacuate coalition civilians to safety in human space. Again, the council had said no, worried that human colonies were too small and underdeveloped to handle millions of refugees. Now, with defeat staring them in the face, those decisions seemed incredibly foolish. The situation has changed, Hana said carefully. If humanity is still willing to help, the coalition would welcome any assistance you can provide. Something shifted in Wu's expression. For just a moment, his calm mask slipped, and Hana saw something that looked almost like relief. I will need to send a priority message to Earth, he said. It will take some time to organize a response. How much time? Give me 12 hours. Hana almost laughed. 12 hours? The Vorthak would be here in less than 48. Even if the humans had a fleet ready to launch immediately, which was impossible, it would take them at least a week to reach coalition space. But she did not want to crush the hope in Wu's voice. You have whatever time you need, Captain. Wu bowed slightly, a human gesture of respect that Hana had grown to appreciate. Thank you, Commander. I promise you will not regret this decision. As Wu walked away toward the communication center, Hana turned back to the tactical display. The red dot seemed to pulse like a heartbeat, counting down the final hours of everything she had sworn to protect. She did not know what the humans could possibly do to help. Their colonies were small, their technology basic, their military experience limited to minor conflicts with pirates and raiders, but at this point she would accept help from anyone, even if it was just a symbolic gesture. At least when the history books were written, they would say that humanity had tried to help when the galaxy burned. Wu's message went out 30 minutes later. It was brief, just a few words sent on a priority channel that reached every human colony simultaneously. The children are in danger. 3 hours later, every human world in known space began to change. President Day was reviewing agricultural reports from the Martian colonies when the priority alert came through. The soft chime that filled her office was one she had hoped never to hear. It meant that Protocol 7 was active, and Protocol 7 meant war. She set down the data pad with steady hands and touched a hidden panel on her desk. The wall behind her slid away, revealing a secure communication center that most people on Earth did not know existed. The screen came to life immediately, showing the concerned faces of 5 other people scattered across the solar system. Confirm. Receipt of Captain Wu's message, she said without ceremony. Confirmed, replied Fleet Admiral Kyung from his command station on Europa. The admiral was a thin man with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. All listening posts picked up the transmission. The coalition is requesting immediate military assistance. How bad is it? Asked General Tay from his headquarters on Luna. The general was built like a mountain, with broad shoulders and hands that looked like they could crush steel. Dr. Nari spoke up from her research facility in the asteroid belt. Very bad. Our deep space monitors show the Vorthak Empire has concentrated 90% of their fleet for a final assault on Kepler 442. The coalition is down to fewer than 300,000 ships, and most of those are damaged. President Day nodded slowly. For over 2 years, humanity had watched the war from the shadows, their advanced sensor networks tracking every movement, every battle, every desperate retreat. The coalition had no idea how closely humans had been monitoring the situation. Dr. Nari, what is your assessment of Vorthak military capabilities? The scientist consulted her data pad. Their technology is approximately 1,200 years behind current human standards. Their tactics are crude but effective against coalition forces. They rely on overwhelming numbers and brute force rather than strategy or innovation. And the coalition? Brave, but unprepared. They have the hearts of warriors but the minds of peacekeepers. Their technology is advanced in some areas, but their military doctrine is centuries out of date. President Day stood and walked to the window that looked out over the sprawling city of New Geneva. Below her, millions of people went about their daily lives completely unaware that their government was about to make a decision that would change the galaxy forever. Admiral Kyung, current fleet status. All ships are at readiness level 1. We can have the first fleet moving within 6 hours, the second and third fleets within 12 hours. Total available force, 52,417 vessels, all equipped with the latest technology. The numbers would have shocked the coalition leadership. As far as they knew, humanity had maybe 1,000 ships, most of them converted civilian vessels. The idea that humans possessed a fleet larger than the current coalition navy would have seemed impossible. But humans had learned long ago that the galaxy was a dangerous place. While other species explored and traded and built peaceful civilizations, humanity had prepared for war. They had done it quietly, secretly, building shipyards in asteroid fields and training crews in deep space where no one would notice. General Tay, ground forces? Ready and equipped. The Marine Corps has been training for large-scale operations for the past 2 years. We have detailed intelligence on every Vorthak world and military installation. President Day turned back to the screen. Dr. Nari, estimated timeline for total coalition defeat if we do not intervene? 72 hours, assuming they fight to the last ship. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what decision was coming, but the weight of it was still enormous. For 2 centuries, humanity had followed a policy of careful neutrality, helping, when asked, but never imposing their will on other species. They had watched wars and conflicts from the sidelines, offering aid and refuge but never taking sides. This would be different. This would announce to the galaxy that humanity was not the weak, primitive species that everyone believed them to be. The coalition has been our friends and allies for 200 years, President Day said finally. When we first reached the stars, they welcomed us with open arms. They shared their knowledge, their culture, their friendship. They have never asked us for anything we could not freely give. She paused, looking at each face on the screen. Now they are asking us to save their lives. The question is not whether we can help them. The question is whether we should reveal what we truly are. Admiral Kyung spoke first. Ma'am, with respect, that choice was made for us the moment the Vorthak started this war. We cannot stand by and watch our friends die when we have the power to stop it. The technology gap is too large, added Dr. Nari. Once we engage, there will be no hiding our capabilities. The galaxy will know that we have been far more than we appeared. General Tay's voice was grim. Ma'am, we have been preparing for this day since we first left Earth. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier has been trained with one purpose: to protect humanity and our friends when the darkness comes. That darkness is here. President Day nodded slowly. She had known this day would come eventually. Humanity had grown too powerful to remain hidden forever, and they had made too many friends to stand aside when those friends faced extinction. Very well. Admiral Kyung, you are authorized to activate Protocol 7. Deploy all available fleets to the Kepler 442 system with orders to eliminate the Vorthak threat. Understood, ma'am. Rules of engagement? The Vorthak Empire has declared war on every peaceful species in known space. They have shown no mercy and accepted no surrender. They will receive the same consideration they have given others. Admiral Kyung's expression was stone cold. Yes, ma'am. General Tay, prepare ground forces for immediate deployment. Dr. Nari, I want full intelligence packages on all Vorthak positions and installations, and I want a complete analysis of their technology and tactics distributed to all fleet commanders within 4 hours. Already prepared and ready for transmission, Dr. Nari replied. President Day took a deep breath. Ladies and gentlemen, for 200 years we have hidden in the shadows, building our strength and hoping for peace. Today we step into the light. Today the galaxy learns what humanity truly is. Across the solar system, massive shipyards that had been hidden for decades began to come alive. On Europa beneath the ice, Admiral Kyung's flagship Defiance powered up its engines. In the asteroid belt, thousands of warships emerged from hollowed-out rocks where they had waited in darkness. On Luna, General Tay's troops boarded transport ships, their advanced armor and weapons making them look like figures from some future nightmare. These were not the peaceful explorers and diplomats that the galaxy knew. These were soldiers, trained and equipped for war in ways that would terrify anyone who saw them. Captain Wu's message had reached Earth in 18 hours. President Day's response took less than 6 hours to prepare, within 12 hours of receiving the call for help. The largest military fleet in galactic history was moving toward Coalition space at speeds that should have been impossible. The message sent back to Captain Wu was simple. Help is coming. Hold the line. But across human space, the real message was being transmitted on military channels. Operation Guardian Angel is active. All units proceed to rally Point Sigma. Time to battle stations is 12 hours. The children need their guardians. The galaxy was about to learn why humanity had been so quiet for so long. Commander Jin stood on the bridge of the Indomitable. Watching space itself seemed to tear apart as the human First Fleet dropped out of hyperspace. Around him, 50,000 warships materialized in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming silver. In the light of Kepler 442's star dot, the human ships were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. They were sleek and angular, built for speed and violence, with weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. Each ship moved with precision, that spoke of crews trained to perfection and technology that bordered on the impossible. Fleet deployment complete, reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Bin. All ships report ready for combat. Coalition forces are hailing us on multiple channels. Put me through to the Coalition flagship, Jin ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the exhausted face of Commander Hana. Behind her, Jin could see the bridge of the Harmony, filled with alien officers staring in shock at the displays showing the human fleet. Commander Hana, Jin said with a slight bow. This is Commander Jin of the Human Expeditionary Force. We received your request for assistance. Hana's mouth opened and closed several times before she found her voice. Commander Jin, we had no idea that humanity possessed such a fleet. Captain Wu said you would send help, but this... 50,000 ships, Jin said calmly. The First Fleet, the Second and Third Fleets are 6 hours behind us. Second and Third? Hana whispered. On another screen, Jin could see the Vorthak response to the human arrival. Their massive fleet, over 3,000 ships strong, was turning to face this new threat. The gray, angular vessels moved like a cloud of locusts, blotting out the stars with their numbers. Commander, Lieutenant Bin said quietly, we are receiving a transmission from the Vorthak fleet. Their warlord wishes to speak with us. Put him through. The screen split to show a figure in dark armor standing on what looked like a throne, made of metal and bone. The Vorthak warlord was huge, even by their standards, and his armor was covered in symbols that probably represented his victories. I am Warlord Krex of the Vorthak Empire, the figure said, his voice distorted by the mask he wore. You are the humans, yes? The weak mammals that crawl in the dirt of their tiny worlds? Jin's expression did not change. This is Commander Jin of the Human Expeditionary Force. You are conducting illegal warfare against peaceful species. Surrender immediately, and your crews will be treated according to galactic law. Krex threw back his head and laughed, a sound like grinding metal. You dare demand surrender from the Vorthak Empire? We who have conquered 17 star systems? We who have crushed every fleet that opposed us? You have been fighting farmers and shopkeepers, Jin replied calmly. Today, you face soldiers. The transmission ended abruptly. On the tactical display, the Vorthak fleet began to accelerate toward the human ships, their formation spreading out like a giant net designed to envelop and destroy. Sir, Lieutenant Bin said, studying his instruments, I am reading their tactical patterns. They are using standard Vorthak battle doctrine. Overwhelming mass assault followed by close-range destruction of enemy ships. Analysis? Their technology is approximately 1,200 years behind ours. Their tactics are crude, but have been effective against coalition forces. They rely on armor and numbers rather than maneuverability or precision. Jin nodded. This was exactly what Dr. Nari had predicted. The Vorthak had built their empire by conquering species that were either peaceful or militarily inexperienced. They had never faced an enemy that was specifically designed for war. Captain Sol, Jin said, opening a channel to the dreadnought Inevitable. Take your battle group and demonstrate proper engagement protocols. On the screen, Captain Sol's weathered face showed a grim smile. Understood, sir. Weapons are hot and ready. The Inevitable and her escort ships moved forward with fluid grace, their engines barely glowing as they accelerated to combat speed. The Vorthak responded by sending 1,000 ships to intercept them, confident that their numbers would be enough to crush this small human force. What happened next would be talked about in military academies for generations. The human ships simply vanished. For a moment, both the Coalition and Vorthak forces stared at empty space where the Inevitable and her escorts had been. Then suddenly they reappeared in the middle of the Vorthak formation, their weapons already firing. The human ships moved like dancers, spinning and weaving through the enemy formation with impossible grace. Their weapons were surgical in their precision, targeting command centers, weapon systems, and engines with deadly accuracy. Vorthak ships that had been built to withstand massive punishment found their armor useless against weapons that cut through it like paper. Cloaking technology? Commander Hana asked over the communication link, her voice filled with awe. Phase shifting, Jin replied casually. We shift slightly out of normal space-time, allowing us to move through solid matter. It is useful for bypassing enemy defenses. In 17 minutes it was over. 847 Vorthak ships lay dead in space, their hulls cracked open like eggs. The human ships had not lost a single vessel, and several had not even taken damage to their shields. The remaining Vorthak fleet hung motionless in space, their crews probably staring in shock at the destruction of nearly a quarter of their force by a handful of enemy ships. Warlord Krex, Jin said, opening communications again. Would you like to reconsider your position? The Vorthak leader's voice was no longer filled with confident laughter. What are you? What kind of weapons are those? The kind that are designed to end wars quickly, Jin replied. Surrender now and we will accept it. Continue fighting, and we will demonstrate why humanity spent 200 years preparing for this day. The Vorthak Empire does not surrender to inferior species. Then you have chosen poorly. Jin closed the communication and turned to his fleet commanders. Around him, 50,000 ships waited for his order, their crews calm and professional, despite facing odds of 60-1. All ships, Jin said clearly, implement Battle Plan Omega. Rules of engagement, total destruction of military targets, preservation of civilian vessels if any are identified. Time limit, 30 minutes. Sir, Lieutenant Bin said. New contacts on long-range sensors. The main Vorthak fleet is approaching from the outer system. 43,000 ships, including their planetary assault forces. Jin smiled for the first time since arriving in the system. Perfect. Signal the second and third fleets to accelerate their arrival. It seems we will have targets for everyone. On the Coalition flagship, Commander Hana watched in amazement as the human fleet began to move. The ships flowed like water, forming complex patterns that seemed to defy physics. Their weapons charged with an energy signature that made her instruments scream warnings. Captain Wu? She said softly to the human observer. How long have your people been able to do this? Wu's expression was sad but determined. Since before we met you, Commander. We have been preparing for this war for over 2 centuries. We just hoped we would never have to fight it. Why did you hide this from us? Because we wanted to be your friends, not your weapons. We wanted to explore the galaxy and learn from you, not terrify you with what we had become. He paused, watching as human ships began their attack run. We have fought each other for thousands of years, Commander. We know what war truly is, and we know what it costs. We hoped that by keeping our strength hidden, we could avoid bringing that knowledge to the stars. The first wave of human ships struck the Vorthak fleet like a hammer hitting glass. The enemy vessels, built for intimidation and brute force, found themselves completely outmatched by weapons and tactics that had been refined through centuries of human conflict. This was not a battle between equals. This was an execution, carried out by the most advanced military force the galaxy had ever seen. And it was just beginning. Admiral Sung watched from the command deck of the flagship Retribution as the second and third fleets dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. 104,000 human warships now filled the space around Kepler 442, their combined firepower enough to sterilize entire star systems. The Vorthak response had been exactly what human intelligence had predicted. Within hours of the first engagement, emergency signals had gone out across the entire Vorthak Empire. Every available ship, from frontline battleships to supply vessels, was being recalled for a final decisive battle. "Admiral," reported Captain Hyo from her intelligence station, "long-range sensors are detecting massive fleet movements throughout Vorthak space. They are pulling ships from 17 different star systems. Total numbers? Current estimate is 47,000 ships, sir. They should arrive within the next 6 hours." Sung nodded calmly. The Vorthak were doing exactly what human strategists had hoped they would do. By concentrating their entire military force in one location, they were giving humanity the chance to end the war in a single engagement. "Captain Hyo, transmit the prepared intelligence package to all fleet commanders. I want everyone to know exactly what we are facing." For the past 2 years, human deep space monitoring stations had tracked every Vorthak ship, cataloged every weapon, and analyzed every tactical pattern. The intelligence package that went out to the human fleet contained more information about Vorthak military capabilities than the Vorthak probably had themselves. "Sir," called Major Wan from the Marine Command Center, "ground assault teams are ready for deployment. We have identified 47 key installations across the Vorthak home system that need to be neutralized." "Sergeant A, status of special weapons?" From her engineering station, Sergeant A looked up with a grin that would have frightened anyone who did not know her. "Planet crackers are loaded and ready, sir. We can take out any military installation from orbit without harming civilian populations." The planet crackers were humanity's answer to the problem of occupying hostile worlds. Rather than using massive bombardments that would kill millions of innocents, the weapons could surgically destroy military targets while leaving everything else untouched. A Vorthak command bunker could be reduced to atoms while a school next to it remained completely unharmed. "Admiral," Captain Hyo said, "we are receiving a priority transmission from Earth. It is President Day herself." The main screen flickered to life, showing the president in her secure command center. Behind her, Sung could see the faces of the other human leaders who had made the decision to reveal humanity's true nature. "Admiral Sung," President Day said, her voice steady and calm. "The entire galaxy is watching. Coalition forces are monitoring our communications, and even neutral species have turned their sensors toward Kepler 442. Whatever happens in the next few hours will determine how the galaxy sees humanity for generations to come." "Understood, ma'am. What are your orders?" "End this war, Admiral. End it quickly, end it completely, and end it in a way that makes sure nothing like this ever happens again." The transmission ended, leaving Sung alone with the weight of command. Around him, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, preparing for what would be the largest space battle in galactic history. "Sir," Lieutenant Bin called from his tactical station, "the Vorthak main fleet is entering the system." Holy stars, there are a lot of them. On the long-range display, 47,000 red dots appeared like a plague of locusts. The Vorthak fleet was enormous, larger than anything the galaxy had seen since the ancient wars thousands of years ago. Their ships filled space from one end of the system to the other, a wall of gray metal and destructive intent. At the center of the formation was a ship larger than anything in the human fleet. The Vorthak Emperor's personal dreadnought was over 10 kilometers long, covered in weapons and armor that had been built from the wreckage of conquered worlds. "Admiral," Captain Hyo said quietly, "we are receiving a transmission from the Emperor himself." "Put him through." The screen showed a figure that dwarfed even the massive warlord Krex. The Vorthak Emperor was ancient by any standard, his armor covered in symbols representing thousands of victories. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone who had never been defeated. I am Emperor Vorthak, ruler of 17 star systems and destroyer of nations. You are the humans who dare to challenge the might of my empire. I am Admiral Sung of the Human Defense Force. You have 30 seconds to surrender unconditionally, or we will destroy your entire fleet. The Emperor's laughter was like the sound of worlds dying. 30 seconds? Foolish mammals, I have conquered. Species that had been traveling the stars since before your world was born. My fleets have destroyed civilizations that you cannot even imagine. Then you should understand what is about to happen to you. Sung cut the transmission and turned to his fleet commanders. All ships, implement Thunder Run protocols. Target, priority is the complete elimination of Vorthak military capabilities. No survivors, no retreats, no mercy. Sir, Major One said, should we offer surrender terms to individual ships? The Vorthak Empire has never accepted surrender from anyone. They have shown no mercy to any species they have conquered. They will receive exactly the same consideration they have given others. The human fleet began to move with a coordination that was almost supernatural. 104,000 ships flowed through space like schools of fish, each vessel knowing exactly where it needed to be and when it needed to be there. The Vorthak fleet, despite its size, moved like a blunt instrument. Their ships formed massive walls designed to overwhelm enemies through sheer firepower and numbers. It was a tactic that had worked against every species they had faced. But they had never faced humanity. The first human ships to engage simply vanished, phase-shifting through the Vorthak formation and reappearing behind enemy lines. Their weapons, powered by technology that the Vorthak could not understand, began systematically destroying command ships and communications relays. Within minutes, the massive Vorthak fleet began to fragment as individual groups lost contact with their central command. Ships that had been coordinating their attacks suddenly found themselves fighting alone, cut off from the tactical network that had held their formation together. Sir, Sergeant A reported, ground assault teams are in position. We have visual confirmation of all target installations on Vorthak Prime and their military colonies. Execute simultaneous strikes. I want every military command center, shipyard, and weapons facility destroyed within the next 10 minutes. Across the Vorthak home system, human marines materialized in the middle of heavily defended installations. But these were not the same humans that the galaxy knew as peaceful explorers. These were soldiers trained in warfare techniques that had been developed over thousands of years of human conflict. The Vorthak defenders, despite their size and strength, found themselves facing enemies that moved like shadows and struck like lightning. Human weapons cut through Vorthak armor like it was paper, and human tactics that had been perfected in the bloodiest wars in Earth's history proved devastatingly effective. Admiral, Captain Hio said, her voice filled with awe, the Vorthak Emperor's flagship is moving to engage us directly. He has concentrated his entire guard fleet around his position. Good. Signal the retribution, defiance, and inevitable. We are going to end this personally. The three most powerful ships in the human fleet broke away from the main battle and moved toward the Emperor's position. The massive Vorthak dreadnought turned to face them, its weapons charging for what would be the final engagement of the war. Sir, Lieutenant Bin said, the Emperor's ship is powering up some kind of superweapon. Energy readings are off the charts. Phase shift on my mark, Sung ordered calmly. 3, 2, 1, mark. The three human ships vanished just as the Emperor's weapon fired, a beam of energy that would have vaporized anything it touched. But there was nothing there to hit. The ships reappeared inside the Emperor's defensive formation, their weapons already firing. The ancient Vorthak dreadnought, built to withstand anything the galaxy could throw at it, found its armor useless against human weapons that operated on principles its builders had never imagined. The battle lasted exactly 4 hours and 23 minutes. When it was over, the space around Kepler 442 was filled with the wreckage of the most powerful military force the galaxy had seen in 1,000 years. 47,000 Vorthak ships lay dead in space, their hulls cracked open and their crews either dead or surrendering. The Vorthak Empire, which had seemed invincible just hours before, no longer existed as a military force. "Admiral, Captain," Hio said quietly, "we are receiving surrender transmissions from Vorthak installations throughout their territory. It seems the word has spread quickly." Sung nodded, feeling the weight of what they had accomplished. Humanity had revealed itself to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible, and there would be no going back to the shadows. "Signal all human fleets," he ordered. "Phase 1 is complete. Begin Phase 2, liberation of occupied territories and establishment of humanitarian aid stations." The war was over, but now came the harder task of building a peace that would last. Ambassador Rowe stood at the podium in the Grand Assembly Hall on Kepler 442, looking out at representatives from over 200 species. The massive chamber was packed with beings she had only seen in textbooks. The ancient Altarians with their crystalline forms, the wise Centaurians with their multiple arms, even the mysterious Voidwalkers who rarely left their home dimension. Everyone had come to see the humans. 3 weeks had passed since the Battle of Kepler 442, and the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. The Vorthak Empire, which had seemed unstoppable just a month ago, was gone. Their military had been completely destroyed. Their leaders were in custody, and their conquered territories were being liberated by human forces with surgical precision. But, more than that, the galaxy had learned that the quiet, peaceful humans they had known for 2 centuries were something else entirely. "Distinguished representatives," Rowe began, her voice carried by translators to every species in the hall. "I stand before you today to address the concerns that many of you have raised about humanity's actions during the recent conflict." Near the front of the assembly, Commander Hana sat with the coalition delegation. The Eldorian leader looked older than she had just weeks ago, still processing everything she had witnessed. Next to her, Captain Wu maintained his usual calm expression, though Rowe could see the weight of responsibility in his eyes. "The first question many of you have asked," Rowe continued, "is how long humanity has possessed the military capabilities that were demonstrated at Kepler 442. The answer is simple. We have been building our defenses since the day we first left Earth." A murmur ran through the assembly. On the viewing screens around the hall, images appeared showing human shipyards hidden in asteroid belts, training facilities on the far edges of star systems, and research stations where new weapons and technologies had been developed in secret. "We did not hide our strength out of deception or malice," Rowe explained. "We hid it out of hope. Hope that we would never need to use it. Hope that the galaxy would remain at peace. Hope that we could be explorers and friends rather than soldiers and conquerors." An ancient Centaurian delegate raised one of his 4 arms. "Ambassador Rowe, if humanity possessed such power, why did you allow the Vorthak to conquer 17 star systems? Why did you wait so long to act?" It was the question Rowe had been expecting and dreading. "Because we are not the galaxy's police force. Because we wanted other species to solve their own problems. Because we hoped that the Vorthak could be stopped through diplomacy and cooperation rather than violence." She paused, looking directly at Commander Hana. "We offered our help 3 times during the war. 3 times the coalition politely declined, believing that humanity was too primitive to make a meaningful contribution. We respected that decision, even though we knew we could end the war at any time." "But you were watching," said a Kalani representative, her silver hair shimmering with emotion. "You were monitoring everything." "Yes," Rowe admitted. "We have been monitoring galactic communications for decades, not to spy on anyone, but to watch for exactly the kind of threat that the Vorthak represented. We knew that someday something would come from beyond the rim that would threaten everyone we cared about." President Day appeared on the main viewing screen, speaking from her office on Earth. Despite the incredible distance, the transmission was crystal clear, using communication technology that most species did not know existed. "My fellow beings," President Day said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had just made one of the most important decisions in galactic history. "Humanity revealed its true nature because our friends were dying. The Coalition has been our partner and ally for 200 years. When they finally asked for our help, we could not refuse. But now that your secret is out, called a Bernari delegate, what happens next? Do you intend to become the galaxy's military dictators? Ro had expected this question as well. Fear was natural when faced with such overwhelming power. The answer to that question can be found in what we have done since the battle ended. Human forces have liberated every world conquered by the Vorthak. We have provided food, medical supplies, and reconstruction materials to millions of refugees. We have arrested war criminals and returned stolen property to its rightful owners. On the screens, images appeared showing human ships delivering aid to devastated worlds, human doctors treating injured civilians of dozens of different species, and human engineers rebuilding cities that had been destroyed by Vorthak bombardment. Most importantly, Ro continued, we have not claimed a single conquered world for humanity. Every liberated planet has been returned to its original government, or, where that was impossible, given the right to determine its own future. A small, furry delegate from the outer rim spoke up in a voice barely above a whisper. But you could conquer us all, could you not? If you wanted to, you could do to us what you did to the Vorthak. The question hung in the air like a weapon. Around the hall, beings shifted nervously, afraid of the answer. Ro nodded slowly. Yes, if humanity wanted to conquer the galaxy, we probably could. Our technology is centuries ahead of most species. Our military doctrine has been refined through thousands of years of warfare. Our industrial capacity could support fleets that would make the force at Kepler 442 look small. The silence was deafening. But we do not want to conquer anyone, Ru said firmly. We want to explore, we want to learn, we want to build things and discover new worlds and meet new species. We want to help our friends when they are in trouble and celebrate with them when they succeed. Commander Hana stood up in the coalition section. Ambassador Ro, may I ask a question? Of course, Commander. Captain Wu told me something during the battle that I have been thinking about ever since. He said that you have been preparing for this war for over 2 centuries, but that you hoped you would never have to fight it. What did he mean? Ro smiled sadly. He meant that humanity knows what war truly costs. We have been fighting each other for our entire recorded history. We know what it means to lose cities, to bury children, to watch civilizations fall. When we finally reached the stars, we promised ourselves that we would never bring that knowledge to other species. She gestured to the screens showing human relief efforts throughout former Vorthak territory. Every human ship captain, every marine, every engineer working to rebuild these worlds knows what war really is. They know it because their ancestors lived through it, died in it, and learned from it. We became the galaxy's best warriors because we understand better than anyone how terrible war can be. So what happens now? Asked the ancient Centaurian. Delegate. President Day answered from Earth. Now we do what we have always wanted to do. We explore the galaxy alongside our friends. We share our knowledge and learn from yours. We help build a civilization where wars like this one never happen again. And if they do happen, pressed a Voidwalker representative, its form shifting between dimensions as it spoke. Then humanity will be ready, Ro said simply. We will always be ready, not because we want war, but because we love peace too much to let it be destroyed by those who do not. Captain Wu stood up in the coalition section and walked to a secondary podium. If I may, he said quietly, I would like to share something with the assembly. Ro nodded, and Wu touched a control on the podium. The main screen showed a recording from the battle at Kepler 442, but not the footage that most beings had seen. This was from inside a human ship during the engagement. This is the bridge of the destroyer Swift Justice during the final assault on the Vorthak Emperor's flagship, Wu said. Watch the faces of the crew. On the screen, human officers worked, at their stations with grim efficiency. Their weapons were destroying enemy ships with devastating effectiveness, but there was no joy in their faces, no celebration of victory. They looked like people doing a terrible job that had to be done. This is Commander Yuki, after receiving surrender from a damaged Vorthak cruiser. Wu continued. The screen showed a young human woman ordering medical supplies and rescue teams to assist the surrendering enemy vessel, her voice professional but tinged with exhaustion. And this is Admiral Sung when he learned that the Emperor's flagship had been destroyed with all hands. The screen showed the Admiral removing his cap and bowing his head for a moment of silence, despite the fact that the Emperor had been responsible for the deaths of millions. Humanity did not reveal its strength because we wanted to terrify the galaxy, Wu said. We revealed it because the alternative was watching our friends die. We fought this war not because we love violence, but because we love peace enough to kill for it. The assembly hall was completely silent. Representatives from hundreds of worlds sat in stunned contemplation of what they had witnessed. Finally, Ambassador Rowe spoke again. The question before us all is simple. What kind of galaxy do we want to build together? Do we want one where the strong prey upon the weak? Where might makes right? Where species live in fear of their neighbors? She paused, looking out at faces that represented trillions of beings across known space. Or do we want a galaxy where friends help friends, where knowledge is shared freely, where children of all species can grow up without fear of war? Commander Hana stood up again. Ambassador Rowe, on behalf of the